The metacognitive realm, the silent genius who changed everything. Byron Avant the metacognitive realm. The silent genius who changed everything. The metacognitive realm. A novel by Byron Avant. Chapter 1. The house on Maple Street. The Clayton House stood like a testament to success on Maple Street, its Georgian colonial architecture speaking of old money and older traditions. Behind its red brick facade and pristine white columns, the family of 6 lived their carefully orchestrated lives, each member playing their part in what appeared to be a perfect symphony of achievement. Dr. Jonathan Clayton adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses as he reviewed his lecture notes for the next day's advanced calculus course at the university. His office, lined floor to ceiling with mathematical treatises and philosophical works, served as both sanctuary and battlefield where he wrestled with the most complex problems his brilliant mind could conjure. Down the hall, Margaret Clayton, Esquire, paced her home office with the phone pressed to her ear, her voice carrying the authoritative tone that had made her one of the city's most respected corporate attorneys. Even at home, she commanded respect, her sharp intellect cutting through legal complexities with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. The sound of video games echoed from the basement where David, 19, was taking a break from his MIT coursework. His laptop displayed several open programming windows, evidence of the computer science projects that had already caught the attention of Silicon Valley recruiters, despite his being only a sophomore. Across the house, in the sunroom that served as an impromptu study space, 16-year-old James hunched over his Yale admissions essays. His acceptance was practically guaranteed. His grades, extracurriculars, and family connections formed a golden pathway to New Haven that seemed almost predetermined. 15-year-old Emma Clayton sat cross-legged on her bed, surrounded by textbooks that spoke to her diverse interests: advanced biology, AP European history, and a well-worn copy of Jane Eyre that she'd read at least a dozen times. Unlike her brothers, whose paths seemed carved in stone, Emma possessed a restless intelligence that questioned everything, including the fundamental assumptions that governed their family's life. And then there was Michael. Michael Clayton, at 21, was the eldest child, though most visitors to the house would never know he existed. His room on the second floor might as well have been another world entirely. While his siblings collected achievements like trophies, Michael collected something far more elusive: understanding. The room itself was sparse, but comfortable. A hospital bed dominated one corner, its rails raised more out of habit than necessity. A reclining chair sat by the large window that faced the backyard, offering a view of the oak tree that had been Michael's silent companion for 2 decades. Bookshelves lined the walls, though they remained officially unused. After all, what use would Michael have for books? On this particular September evening, the family followed their usual dinner routine. Margaret had prepared Michael's meal on a special tray: soft foods that required no chewing, carefully pureed, and arranged with the clinical precision she'd brought to everything in her life. Jonathan carried the tray upstairs, as he had every evening for years. "How was your day, son?" Jonathan asked softly as he entered Michael's room. He set the tray on the bedside table and helped position Michael in his chair. To any observer, Michael appeared completely unresponsive, his eyes open but vacant, his body still except for the gentle rise and fall of his breathing. Jonathan continued his one-sided conversation as he helped Michael eat, sharing details about his day at the university, a particularly challenging theorem he was working on, and his concerns about an upcoming conference presentation. This ritual had become as natural as breathing, though Jonathan often wondered if any part of his words penetrated whatever barriers contained his eldest son. After ensuring Michael was comfortable for the night, Jonathan kissed his forehead and whispered, "I love you, Michael. Sleep well." The house settled into its evening rhythms. David video called his girlfriend back in Boston, James stressed over his college essays, and Emma practiced violin in the music room. Margaret and Jonathan shared their daily decompression conversation over herbal tea, discussing the children's achievements and their own professional challenges. "James's essay is coming along well," Margaret reported. "I think he has a real chance at early admission." "David called earlier," Jonathan added. "His professor wants him to co-author a paper on quantum computing algorithms." At 19. "Sometimes I can hardly believe it." "And Emma made first-chair violin today," Margaret smiled. "The director says she's the most naturally gifted student he's had in 15 years. They spoke of their children's successes with pride, as they always did. But like every night, a shadow passed over their conversation when they reached the unspoken fourth child. Michael's condition, diagnosed as severe autism with intellectual disability, remained the family's greatest sadness, the one challenge that all their wealth, education, and influence could not overcome. What they didn't know was that 2 floors above them, Michael Clayton was solving problems that would have challenged the greatest minds in human history. As the house grew quiet, Michael's awareness expanded. The limitations that seemed to confine his body during the day became irrelevant in the darkness. His mind, unfettered by the expectations and assumptions that govern normal communication, operated on frequencies that others couldn't perceive. On Jonathan's desk downstairs, a complex proof that had stumped the professor for weeks lay unfinished, with equations scrawled across multiple whiteboards in his office. Michael had been listening to his father's frustrated monologues about the problem for days. In his mind, he could see the elegant solution as clearly as most people see their own reflection. While his family slept, Michael's influence moved through the house like a gentle current. The stack of papers on his father's desk shifted slightly, organizing themselves in a new configuration. When morning came, Jonathan would find the proof completed in his own handwriting, though he would have no memory of solving it. This was Michael's gift and his burden, a mind capable of extraordinary things, trapped in a body that the world had deemed broken. But gifts, as Michael had learned in his 21 years of silent observation, have a way of revealing themselves when the time is right. And for Michael Clayton, that time was approaching faster than anyone could imagine. Chapter 2. The patterns. 3 weeks into October, Dr. Jonathan Clayton stood in his office staring at a phenomenon that defied explanation. For the 4th time in as many weeks, he had awakened to find complex mathematical proofs completed on his desk, work that he distinctly remembered struggling with the night before. "Margaret," he called to his wife as she prepared for court that morning, "I think I might be experiencing some kind of breakthrough in my research." Or... He paused, unwilling to voice the alternative possibility that was beginning to worry him. Or what? Margaret appeared in the doorway of his office, adjusting her pearl earrings with the efficiency of someone perpetually running late. Or I'm developing some form of dissociative disorder where I'm solving complex mathematical problems in my sleep. Margaret studied her husband's face, noting the genuine concern beneath his attempt at humor. "Have you been feeling unwell? Stressed?" "No more than usual." "But Margaret, these aren't simple problems. Yesterday, I was working on a proof that's been stumping me for months, a problem in non-Euclidean geometry that has implications for string theory. When I came down this morning, it was completed. Perfectly. With insights that I'm not sure I'm capable of generating." "Maybe your subconscious is more powerful than you realize," Margaret suggested, though her tone carried less conviction than her words. Jonathan nodded absently, but his mind was already moving to other strange occurrences. David's computer had somehow debugged itself twice in the past month, complex programming errors mysteriously corrected overnight. James had found his college essays reorganized and improved, though he'd sworn he'd saved inferior versions. Even Emma had mentioned that her violin seemed to stay in perfect tune despite the changing, weather that usually wreaked havoc with string instruments. What Jonathan didn't share with his wife was the most unsettling discovery of all. Each morning, when he checked on Michael, he found his son positioned slightly differently than he'd left him the night before. Not dramatically, just small shifts that could have been attributed to natural movement during sleep, if Michael had ever shown signs of such voluntary movement before. Meanwhile, upstairs, Michael experienced the world through layers of awareness that his family couldn't fathom. His consciousness operated like a vast network, processing thousands of inputs simultaneously. The frequency of his father's frustrated pacing below, the melodic patterns in Emma's practice sessions, the algorithmic logic that drove David's coding projects, even the rhetorical structures that James employed in his writing. But Michael's greatest joy came from the quiet moments when his family members would visit his room, not out of duty, but from genuine affection. Emma was his most frequent visitor, often doing her homework in the chair beside his bed, reading aloud from whatever novel had captured her imagination. "You know what I love about Jane Austen," Emma said on a Thursday afternoon, sprawling across the foot of Michael's bed with Pride and Prejudice open in her lap. She understood that intelligence comes in so many forms. Mr. Darcy had to learn to see past his prejudices, and Elizabeth had to learn that first impressions could be wrong. Michael's mind sparked with recognition. Through the filter of his sister's voice, He absorbed the novel's intricate social observations, its commentary on the dangers of assumption and the power of understanding. But more than that, he felt the warmth of Emma's presence, her unconscious acceptance of him as a worthy audience for her thoughts. "Sometimes I think people just see what they expect to see," Emma continued, absently reaching over to straighten Michael's blanket. "Like with you, everyone assumes." She trailed off, a flush creeping up her neck, as if she'd almost voiced something forbidden. In the silence that followed, Michael wished desperately that he could find a way to tell his sister that her instincts were correct, that beneath his apparent limitations lay a mind that treasured every word she shared, every moment of connection she offered. That evening at dinner, the family's conversation took an unexpected turn when James announced that he'd received an early acceptance letter from Yale. "They want me to start in their accelerated pre-law program," James beamed, passing the letter around the table. "Full scholarship plus guaranteed admission to Yale Law School if I maintain a 3.7 GPA. The family erupted in congratulations, and Margaret immediately began planning a celebration dinner. But Emma, always attuned to undercurrents that others missed, noticed something odd. "James," she said slowly, "didn't you tell me last week that you were worried your essays weren't strong enough?" James's smile faltered slightly. "Well, yes, but I worked on them more. Made some improvements." "What kind of improvements?" "Just structural things. Better transitions, stronger arguments. I must have been being too hard on myself before." Emma nodded, but her mind was working. She'd read one of James's essays the week before when he'd asked for feedback, and while it had been good, it hadn't been spectacular. Yet, according to his acceptance letter, his application had been deemed exceptionally compelling and remarkably mature in its philosophical depth. After dinner, as Emma helped clear the table, she found herself thinking about patterns. Her father's mysterious mathematical breakthroughs. David's computer problems that seemed to solve themselves. James's sudden improvement in writing. Even her own violin, which had somehow remained perfectly tuned despite humidity changes that should have affected the strings. On impulse, she climbed the stairs to Michael's room. She found him in his usual position, reclined in his chair facing the window, the last rays of autumn sunlight painting his profile in gold. "Michael," she said softly, settling into the chair beside him. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen, okay?" She waited, as she always did, though she never received any indication that he heard her. "I think there's something special about you. Something the doctors missed, something Mom and Dad don't understand." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I think you're helping us somehow. I don't know how it's possible, but I think you're watching over all of us in ways we can't see." For just a moment, Emma could have sworn she saw something flicker in Michael's eyes, a spark of recognition, a moment of connection that transcended the boundaries of typical communication. But when she blinked, the moment was gone, leaving her to wonder if she'd imagined it entirely. As she sat with her brother in the growing darkness, Emma made a decision that would change everything. She was going to pay attention, really pay attention, to the patterns emerging around their house. And if her suspicions were correct, if Michael truly was the source of their family's mysterious good fortune, then it was time for the truth to come to light. Michael, perceiving his sister's newfound determination through senses that operated beyond the conventional five, felt something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. For the first time in his life, someone was truly seeing him, and that recognition blazed through his consciousness like a star being born. The gift that had been hidden for so long was finally ready to reveal itself. Chapter 3. The Invisible Hand. 3 weeks after the mathematical proof appeared on Jonathan's desk, the mysterious assistance continued to manifest throughout the Clayton household, but no one suspected its true source. Each family member attributed their sudden improvements to personal growth, harder work, or simple good fortune. Jonathan had begun to view his recent breakthroughs as evidence of his own evolving mathematical intuition. "Sometimes the subconscious processes problems in ways we don't understand," he explained to his colleagues when they marveled at his recent productivity. "I must be entering a particularly creative phase of my career." The truth was far more extraordinary. Each night, after the house settled into sleep, Michael's consciousness expanded beyond the confines of his motionless body. Through means he himself didn't fully understand, he could sense the electromagnetic patterns of the human brain, could perceive the neural pathways that carried thoughts and memories. When his family members entered REM sleep, Their minds became more permeable, more open to the gentle guidance he could provide. Michael had discovered this ability gradually, over years of desperate attempts to connect with his family. It had started with tiny influences, nudging Emma to remember a forgotten homework assignment, helping James find the right word for an essay. But as his understanding grew, so did his capability to assist with increasingly complex problems. The work was exhausting in ways that his physical care routine could never be. Mental influence required enormous concentration and left him drained for days afterward. But the joy of helping his family, of contributing to their successes, made every moment of effort worthwhile. David's programming projects had become Michael's particular passion. The logical structures of code appealed to his mathematical mind, and he found he could visualize elegant solutions to problems that stumped his brother. When David slept, Michael would gently guide his subconscious toward more efficient algorithms, more creative approaches to user interface design. "I'm getting better at this," David told his girlfriend over video chat, reviewing the code he'd written the night before. "This recursive function is more sophisticated than anything I've created before. I must be absorbing more from my advanced classes than I realized." James's college applications had presented a different kind of challenge. Michael couldn't simply provide knowledge. He had to help his brother access deeper emotional truths, more mature perspectives on the experiences James was writing about. Through careful influence during dream states, Michael helped James explore the philosophical implications of his volunteer work, the ethical dimensions of his academic interests. "Your essays have really improved," Margaret observed, reading over James's latest draft. "There's a depth here that I didn't expect from someone your age." "I've been thinking a lot about what really matters," James replied honestly. "Somehow, things that seemed complicated before are becoming clearer." Emma's academic challenges were perhaps the most rewarding to address. Her quick mind and genuine curiosity made her an ideal subject for Michael's subtle guidance. He helped her see connections between seemingly unrelated concepts, guided her toward more sophisticated analytical approaches. But more than that, he found ways to nurture her natural empathy and emotional intelligence. Margaret's legal work presented the most complex challenges. Michael couldn't simply provide answers to legal questions. He had to help his mother see cases from new angles, understand her client's motivations more deeply. Through gentle influence during her brief afternoon naps, he helped her recognize patterns in human behavior that enhanced her ability to represent her clients effectively. "I've been having the most interesting dreams lately," Margaret mentioned to Jonathan one evening. "Complex scenarios that seem to help me understand my cases better. I wake up with insights I didn't have before." But Michael's greatest joy came not from the academic and professional assistance he provided, but from the simple pleasure of observing his family's daily lives. He memorized Emma's facial expressions when she read novels that moved her. He treasured the sound of David's laughter during video calls with friends. He studied James's gestures when he was excited about his college prospects. He absorbed the warmth in his parents' voices when they discussed their children's achievements. Through his window, Michael watched the seasons change, marking time by the transformation of the oak tree that had become his closest companion. But inside the house, he was present for every family dinner conversation, every bedtime story Emma read aloud while doing homework, every worry his parents shared during their evening talks. The family had no idea they were living with someone who loved them more deeply than they could imagine, someone who celebrated their victories and worried about their challenges with the intensity that only profound love could generate. Emma's visit to his room each evening had become the highlight of Michael's day. Though she didn't suspect his true capabilities, she treated him with a genuine affection that warmed his heart. "I had the strangest thing happen in chemistry today," she told him one evening, settling into her usual chair. "We were working on molecular bonding, and suddenly I understood concepts that had been confusing me for weeks. It was like someone had turned on a light in my brain." Michael listened to every word, treasuring these one-sided conversations that felt like real connection even though Emma couldn't know how completely he understood and appreciated her presence. "Sometimes I wonder what you think about all day," Emma continued, unconsciously echoing Michael's own greatest wish. "I know the doctors say you probably don't understand much, but I like to think you're listening. I hope my talking doesn't bother you." If only she knew, Michael thought, how her voice was the most beautiful sound in his world, how her presence made even the most difficult days bearable. As autumn deepened into winter, the family's successes continued to accumulate. Jonathan's research was gaining national attention. David's programming skills had impressed his professors enough to earn him early admission to graduate-level courses. James had been accepted to Yale with a full scholarship, his application essays deemed exceptional by the admissions committee. Emma was excelling in all her classes and had been selected for the state's honor orchestra. "We must be doing something right," Margaret observed during a rare family dinner where all the schedules aligned. "You're all achieving at levels that exceed even my highest expectations." "Maybe we just have good genes," David joked, but Jonathan was more thoughtful. "I've been wondering about that myself," he said. "It's almost as if our family has been blessed with unusual good fortune this year." "Or maybe we're finally hitting our stride," James suggested. "Sometimes everything just comes together at the right time." Michael listened to their speculation with a mixture of pride and longing. He was responsible for much of their success, but they would never know it. He was the family's secret guardian, the invisible hand that guided them toward their best selves, the silent heart that loved them more than they could ever understand. But even as he reveled in their achievements, Michael had begun working on something that would change everything. Using the same mental abilities that allowed him to influence his family's subconscious minds, he had started exploring the electronic devices throughout the house. Computers, tablets, smartphones, all of them were simply complex arrangements of electrical patterns that his consciousness could learn to manipulate. It was slow work, requiring months of careful experimentation. But gradually, Michael began to understand how to interact with digital systems directly, how to create programs and files that existed only through his mental influence. He was building something extraordinary, a communication system that would allow him to reveal himself when the time was right. For now, though, he remained the family's anonymous benefactor, their unrecognized guardian angel. And as winter gave way to spring, Michael continued his patient work, both in helping his family achieve their dreams and in preparing for the day when he would finally, after 21 years of silence, find a way to speak. Chapter 4. The scholarship year spring brought a wave of extraordinary news to the Clayton household. James had not only been accepted to Yale with a full scholarship, but had also been awarded the university's prestigious Thornton Fellowship, given to only 3 incoming students each year based on the exceptional quality of their application essays. "Your writing demonstrated a philosophical maturity that impressed our entire admissions committee," the fellowship coordinator told James during a congratulatory phone call. "The depth of insight into human nature and social justice issues is remarkable for someone your age." James accepted the praise graciously, though privately he was amazed by his own transformation as a writer. Over the past year, his essays had evolved from competent but ordinary to sophisticated and compelling. He attributed this growth to his increased reading and his volunteer work with local community organizations, never suspecting that his sleeping mind had been gently guided toward deeper understanding by his silent brother upstairs. David's achievements were equally impressive. His artificial intelligence project had caught the attention of Professor Martinez at MIT, who invited him to co-author a paper for the Journal of Computational Intelligence. The project's innovative approach to pattern recognition was being hailed as potentially groundbreaking. "I don't know where these insights are coming from," David confided to his roommate. "It's like I'm accessing parts of my brain I never knew existed. The algorithms I'm developing are more elegant than anything I thought I was capable of creating." Emma's academic year had been a symphony of success. Her grades had improved dramatically, her violin performances had become more nuanced and emotional, and she'd been selected to attend a prestigious summer music program at Juilliard. More than that, she developed a reputation among her teachers for asking unusually thoughtful questions that advanced classroom discussions in unexpected directions. "Emma has a gift for seeing connections that others miss," her English teacher told Margaret during parent conferences. Her analysis of literature demonstrates insights typically found in graduate-level work. Margaret herself was experiencing the most successful period of her legal career. Her recent cases had been marked by strategic brilliance and an uncanny ability to understand her clients' needs and motivations. She'd been invited to speak at the State Bar Association's annual conference and was being courted by prestigious firms that wanted to recruit her. "I feel like I'm finally hitting my professional stride," she told Jonathan over dinner. "My approach to cases has become more intuitive somehow. I'm seeing angles and strategies that wouldn't have occurred to me before." Jonathan's research had exploded into prominence over the past year. His papers on advanced mathematical theory were being cited internationally, and he'd been invited to deliver keynote addresses at conferences in Oxford and Tokyo. The university had promoted him to department chair and increased his research funding substantially. "It's the strangest thing," he mused to his colleagues. "I feel like I'm channeling insights from somewhere beyond my conscious understanding. The mathematical relationships I'm discovering seem to reveal themselves rather than being derived through traditional methods." Through it all, Michael observed his family's triumphs with quiet joy. Each success they achieved through his gentle guidance filled him with a satisfaction deeper than any personal accomplishment could have provided. He was witness to their happiness, architect of their achievements, and silent guardian of their dreams. But Michael's true emotional sustenance came from the daily rhythms of family life. He treasured Margaret's brief check-ins each morning before she left for work, when she would adjust his blankets and share her plans for the day. He loved listening to Jonathan's evening routine of discussing mathematical concepts, a tradition that had evolved from simple caretaking into genuine intellectual companionship, even if Jonathan didn't realize his audience was fully engaged. David's weekend visits home had become highlights of Michael's month. Though his brother was typically absorbed in his laptop, working on projects or video chatting with friends, Michael appreciated simply being in the presence of David's animated personality and creative energy. James's departure for Yale in the fall had been bittersweet for Michael. He was proud of his brother's achievement, particularly proud because he had contributed to the essays that made James's acceptance possible, but he missed the sound of James practicing debate arguments or discussing current events with their parents. Emma remained Michael's most frequent companion. Her evening homework sessions in his room had evolved into comfortable one-sided conversations about her day, her thoughts, and her dreams for the future. Though she had no idea her words were being absorbed and treasured, her presence provided Michael with his deepest sense of connection. "I had the most interesting discussion in philosophy class today," Emma told him one evening in late spring. "We were talking about consciousness and what it means to be aware. Some philosophers think consciousness might exist in forms we don't recognize or understand." Michael listened with fascination as Emma unknowingly explored concepts that were central to his own existence. "I keep thinking about how we assume someone is unconscious just because they can't respond in ways we expect," Emma continued. "But what if consciousness is more complex than that? What if awareness can exist without the ability to demonstrate it conventionally?" The irony was both beautiful and painful for Michael. His sister was developing philosophical insights that perfectly described his own condition, yet she had no idea how personally relevant her words were to the person sitting 3 feet away from her. As Emma's junior year progressed, Michael began to notice subtle changes in his family's dynamic. Success had brought them confidence, but it had also brought new pressures and higher expectations. Jonathan was struggling to balance his increased responsibilities with his family time. Margaret was working longer hours to handle her growing caseload. David was spending more time at MIT, coming home less frequently. Only Emma seemed to remain grounded in the family's core relationships. She still visited Michael every evening, still treated him with the same gentle affection she'd always shown. Her consistency provided Michael with stability as other aspects of family life became more complex. During these conversations, Michael began to develop a deeper understanding of his sister's character. Emma possessed an emotional intelligence that complemented her academic abilities. She was naturally empathetic, instinctively drawn to questions of justice and fairness. More than her siblings, she seemed to understand that success meant nothing without meaningful relationships. "I've been thinking about what I want to do with my life," Emma told Michael one evening as she worked on college preparation materials. "Everyone expects me to pursue something prestigious, medicine or law like Mom, or maybe professional music. But I keep thinking about careers that involve helping people who can't help themselves." Michael's heart swelled with pride at his sister's compassionate instincts. Through his subtle influence on her academic work, he had tried to nurture her natural empathy while developing her analytical capabilities. Now he could see that Emma was integrating these qualities into a genuine desire to serve others. "I know this sounds naive," Emma continued, "but I want to do work that makes a real difference for people who are overlooked or misunderstood. There are so many individuals who have value and potential that society doesn't recognize." Again, Emma was unknowingly describing Michael's own situation with startling accuracy. But more than that, she was articulating the values that Michael hoped to see flourish in a world: compassion for the different, recognition of hidden worth, and dedication to revealing human potential in all its forms. As spring turned to summer, Michael continued his secret work on the communication system he was developing. Using his ability to manipulate electronic devices directly through mental influence, he had been slowly building a sophisticated program that existed entirely within the family's home computer network. The work was painstaking, requiring months of careful effort to create something that would not only allow him to communicate, but would also prove his authorship beyond any doubt. The program was nearly complete, but Michael was waiting for the right moment to reveal it. He wanted his family to be together, to be in a place emotionally where they could handle the revelation of his true nature. More importantly, he wanted to be sure that his emergence would bring them joy rather than guilt or regret about the years they had spent unaware of his capabilities. For now, he remained content to be their anonymous guardian, their invisible supporter, their secret source of inspiration and guidance. As he watched his family thrive and grow, Michael knew that the love he felt for them was being repaid through their success and happiness. Soon, very soon, he would find a way to tell them how much they meant to him. But until that moment arrived, Michael Clayton would continue to be what he had always been, the silent heart of a family that never knew how deeply they were loved. Chapter 5. The Guardian's Heart Summer arrived with a symphony of graduation ceremonies and family celebrations. James's departure for Yale was marked by a gathering that filled the house with extended family, friends, and neighbors who marveled at the Clayton children's remarkable achievements. Michael, positioned by his bedroom window, could hear the laughter and conversation drifting up from the backyard celebration below. "Our James is going to change the world," he heard his grandmother declare. "Mark my words, that boy will be arguing cases before the Supreme Court someday." Michael smiled internally at the prediction. Through his careful influence on James's writing and thinking, he had helped nurture exactly the kind of legal and ethical reasoning that might indeed lead to such heights. But more than James's potential for fame, Michael was proud of the compassionate worldview his brother had developed, a perspective that would make him the kind of lawyer who fought for justice rather than merely victory. Emma had been offered a summer internship at the university's psychology department, working with Dr. Patricia Hendricks on research related to cognitive development. It was an unusual opportunity for a high school student, but Emma's teachers had recommended her based on her exceptional insights into human behavior and learning. "I'm particularly interested in her questions about consciousness and awareness," Dr. Hendricks had told Margaret when offering the position. "She seems to have an intuitive understanding of how the mind works that's quite remarkable for someone her age." Michael knew that Emma's psychological insights had been sharpened by his subtle guidance during her sleep. Through gentle influence on her dream states, he had helped her recognize patterns in human behavior, understand the complexity of motivation and emotion. But her natural empathy and curiosity provided the foundation for growth that no amount of external assistance could create. David had chosen to remain at MIT for the summer, working on advanced research projects that were attracting attention from major technology companies. His approaches to artificial intelligence and pattern recognition were being described as revolutionary by professors who had worked in the field for decades. "David's mind works differently than other programmers," his research advisor had told Jonathan during a proud father's visit to campus. "He sees solutions that are elegant and innovative in ways that suggest genuine genius. We're hoping he'll consider staying for graduate work rather than accepting the industry offers that are already coming his way." Michael felt a deep satisfaction knowing that his brother's success was built on genuine capability, enhanced by the kind of sophisticated thinking that Michael had helped develop. David's programming had become more than mere code. It was approaching the level of digital art with algorithms that possessed an almost aesthetic beauty. As his family members pursued their various summer activities, Michael found himself with more time to work on his secret project. The communication program he was developing had grown far beyond a simple text-to-speech system. It was becoming a comprehensive interface that would allow him to demonstrate the full scope of his capabilities while providing undeniable proof of his authorship. The program could generate speech with emotional nuance, create visual presentations, compose music, and even produce simple animations. More importantly, it contained detailed records of every instance of assistance Michael had provided to his family over the years, homework solutions, research insights, creative suggestions, all documented with timestamps and analysis that would prove his involvement beyond any doubt. But Michael wasn't ready to reveal himself yet. He wanted to wait until his family was complete again, until the emotional dynamics were right for such a momentous disclosure. More than that, he wanted to be absolutely certain that his emergence would bring joy rather than disruption to the relationships he had spent so long nurturing. Emma's summer research provided Michael with particular pleasure to observe. Working in Dr. Hendrix's lab, she was contributing to studies on learning disabilities and cognitive diversity. Her questions and insights were advancing research in ways that impressed the graduate students and faculty members. Emma seems to have an unusual ability to understand how different minds process information, Dr. Hendrix mentioned to Margaret during a chance encounter at the university. She's proposed several modifications to our assessment protocols that could significantly improve our ability to identify hidden capabilities in individuals with cognitive differences. Michael found beautiful irony in Emma's work. Without knowing it, she was developing techniques that might have identified someone exactly like him, a person with extraordinary capabilities trapped behind apparent disability. Her research was contributing to a field that could prevent other families from spending decades unaware of their loved one's true potential. Margaret's career had reached new heights over the summer. Her innovative approaches to complex legal cases had earned her recognition as one of the state's most effective attorneys. She'd been invited to teach a seminar at the law school and was being courted by the governor's office for a position on a judicial reform commission. "Your mother has always been brilliant," Jonathan told Emma one evening as they discussed Margaret's latest achievement. "But this year, she seems to have developed an almost supernatural ability to understand her clients and anticipate her opponent's strategies. It's like she can see into people's motivations in ways that weren't apparent before." Michael knew that his nighttime assistance to Margaret had focused on helping her recognize patterns in human behavior, understand the emotional undercurrents that drove legal conflicts. But her natural intelligence and ethical foundation had allowed her to use these insights in ways that served justice rather than mere tactical advantage. Jonathan's own research had continued to flourish. His papers were being cited internationally, and he'd been invited to collaborate with mathematicians at Oxford and Cambridge on problems that had puzzled scholars for decades. The solutions he was finding seemed to emerge from a deep intuitive understanding that complemented his rigorous analytical training. "Sometimes I feel like I'm channeling insights from beyond my conscious understanding," Jonathan confided to a colleague. "The mathematical relationships I'm discovering seem to reveal themselves rather than being derived through traditional methods." For Michael, helping his father had become a particularly rich form of collaboration. Jonathan's mathematical mind was sophisticated enough to appreciate truly elegant solutions, and their evening conversations, though one-sided, had become genuine intellectual exchanges. Michael would listen to his father's problems and frustrations, then work through the night to provide insights that advanced both Jonathan's research and the broader field of mathematics. As summer progressed, Michael noticed that his family's success was changing their relationships in subtle ways. They were more confident, more ambitious, more willing to take on challenges that might have intimidated them before. But they were also busier, more focused on their individual achievements, and sometimes less present for the simple family interactions that Michael treasured most. This evolution was natural and largely positive, but it made Michael appreciate even more deeply the time Emma spent with him each evening. While other family members were increasingly absorbed in their expanding opportunities, Emma remained constant in her attention and affection. "I had the most interesting realization today," Emma told him one evening in late July. "I was working with a child who's been diagnosed with severe autism, and I kept thinking about how intelligence might exist in forms we don't recognize. What if some people who seem to have cognitive disabilities actually have different kinds of awareness that our tests can't measure?" Michael's heart raced as Emma unknowingly described his exact situation. Her research was leading her toward insights that were profoundly relevant to his own condition, yet she had no idea how personal her words were to the brother sitting beside her. "The more I learn about consciousness and cognitive diversity," Emma continued, "the more I think we're missing something important. There might be whole categories of intelligence that we've never learned to identify or appreciate." As August approached and the family began preparing for the new academic year, Michael felt a growing sense of anticipation. His communication program was nearly complete, needing only a few final refinements before it would be ready for deployment. More importantly, he was beginning to feel emotionally prepared for the revelation that would change everything. The decision to emerge from his silence wasn't one Michael was taking lightly. For 21 years, he had been safe in his anonymity, loved and cared for without the complex expectations that would inevitably come with recognition of his capabilities. Revealing himself would transform not only his own life, but the entire family dynamic. Yet Michael also knew that his continued silence was becoming a form of selfishness. His family deserved to know the truth about who they were living with, caring for, and loving. They deserved to understand that their kindness and devotion had been received and treasured by someone who was fully present to appreciate their gifts. More than that, Michael was beginning to feel a calling that extended beyond his family's walls. Emma's research had shown him that there might be others like him, individuals whose capabilities were hidden behind apparent disability, families who were living with unrecognized genius, parents who were mourning the loss of children who had never actually been absent. If his emergence could help just one other family discover the truth about their loved one, if his story could prevent even one person from spending years in unnecessary isolation, then the disruption to his comfortable anonymity would be worthwhile. As the summer nights grew shorter and the oak tree outside his window began showing the first hints of autumn color, Michael put the final touches on his revelation. Soon, very soon, the Clayton family would discover that their quiet, still son and brother had been present all along, listening to their conversations, celebrating their achievements, and loving them with an intensity that words could barely express. The boy who had been silent for 21 years was almost ready to speak, and when he did, he would tell them not of regret or resentment, but of gratitude, love, and joy at having been part of their lives even in ways they never knew. Michael Clayton was preparing to give his family the greatest gift he could offer, the knowledge that they had never been alone, that their love had always been received, ND. The more I learn about consciousness and cognitive diversity, Emma continued, the more I think we're missing something important. There might be whole categories of intelligence that we've never learned to identify or appreciate. As August approached and the family began preparing for the new academic year, Michael felt a growing sense of anticipation. His communication program was nearly complete, needing only a few final refinements before it would be ready for deployment. More importantly, he was beginning to feel emotionally prepared for the revelation that would change everything. The decision to emerge from his silence wasn't one Michael was taking lightly. For 21 years, he had been safe in his anonymity, loved and cared for without the complex expectations that would inevitably come with recognition of his capabilities. Revealing himself would transform not only his own life, but the entire family dynamic. Yet Michael also knew that his continued silence was becoming a form of selfishness. His family deserved to know the truth about who they were living with, caring for, and loving. They deserved to understand that their kindness and devotion had been received and treasured by someone who was fully present to appreciate their gifts. More than that, Michael was beginning to feel a calling that extended beyond his family's walls. Emma's research had shown him that there might be others like him, individuals whose capabilities were hidden behind apparent disability, families who were living with unrecognized genius, parents who were mourning the loss of children who had never actually been absent. If his emergence could help just one other family discover the truth about their loved one, if his story could prevent even one person from spending years in unnecessary isolation, then the disruption to his comfortable anonymity would be worthwhile. As the summer nights grew shorter, and the oak tree outside his window began showing the first hints of autumn color, Michael put the final touches on his revelation. Soon, very soon, the Clayton family would discover that their quiet, still son and brother had been present all along, listening to their conversations, celebrating their achievements, and loving them with an intensity that words could barely express. The boy who had been silent for 21 years was almost ready to speak, and when he did, he would tell them not of regret or resentment, but of gratitude, love, and joy at having been part of their lives even in ways they never knew. Michael Clayton was preparing to give his family the greatest gift he could offer, the knowledge that they had never been alone, that their love had always been received and returned, and that the extraordinary success they had achieved was built on a foundation of genuine capability, enhanced by devotion they were only beginning to understand. Chapter 6. The golden year, the autumn of Michael's 22nd year, brought unprecedented achievements to every corner of the Clayton household. As September painted the leaves in brilliant colors, the family found themselves celebrating success after success, each victory building on the last in ways that seemed almost magical. James had not only excelled in his first semester at Yale, but had been selected for the university's most prestigious honor society after just 2 months on campus. His professors consistently praised his writing and analytical thinking, describing his work as remarkably mature for an undergraduate and demonstrating insights typically found in graduate-level scholarship. "I feel like everything is clicking into place," James told his parents during a weekend phone call. "The readings that used to challenge me now seem to reveal their meanings naturally. My essay writing has become almost intuitive. I can see connections and arguments that I never would have noticed before." David's research at MIT had attracted the attention of several Silicon Valley companies, but he had also received an unprecedented offer from a university to fast-track him into their doctoral program with full funding and the opportunity to lead his own research team. His work on artificial intelligence was being hailed as groundbreaking by professors who had worked in the field for decades. "David's approach to machine learning is unlike anything we've seen," his advisor told Jonathan during a parent visit. "He seems to understand pattern recognition at an almost instinctive level. His algorithms don't just process data, they find elegant solutions that demonstrate genuine creativity." Emma had begun her senior year of high school with a confidence and academic excellence that amazed her teachers. Her college counselor was already predicting acceptance to any university she chose to apply to based on her combination of perfect grades, exceptional test scores, and the depth of insight she demonstrated in her writing and class discussions. Emma has a gift for understanding complex philosophical and psychological concepts, her AP psychology teacher told Margaret. "Her questions consistently advance our classroom discussions in directions that surprise me. She seems to have an intuitive understanding of human consciousness and behavior that's quite remarkable." Margaret's legal career had reached heights she had never imagined possible. Her recent success in a series of high-profile cases had established her as one of the state's most sought-after attorneys. The governor had personally asked her to serve on a commission reforming the state's judicial system, recognizing her unique ability to understand complex legal and ethical issues. Margaret has developed an almost supernatural ability to read juries and anticipate opposing counsel's strategies, a colleague observed. "It's like she can see into people's motivations and emotional states in ways that give her incredible advantages in the courtroom." Jonathan's mathematical research had exploded into international prominence. His papers were being translated into multiple languages, and he had been invited to collaborate with research teams at Oxford, Cambridge, and the Sorbonne. The university had not only granted him tenure-track status, but had created a new endowed chair specifically for his work. Jonathan's recent insights into theoretical mathematics are revolutionary, the department chair told the university's board of trustees. "He's solving problems that have puzzled brilliant minds for decades, and his approaches demonstrate the kind of elegant thinking that defines true genius." Through it all, Michael observed his family's triumphs with deep satisfaction while putting the final touches on the communication system that would soon allow him to reveal his role in their success. The program he had spent months developing was now sophisticated beyond anything currently available in assistive technology. It could generate speech with emotional nuance, create visual presentations, compose music, and even produce complex written documents. But more than its technical capabilities, the program contained comprehensive documentation of every instance of assistance Michael had provided to his family over the years. Every homework solution, every research insight, every creative suggestion was recorded with timestamps and detailed analysis that would prove his involvement beyond any doubt. Michael had also prepared something more personal, a letter explaining his 22 years of silence, his deep love for his family, and his joy at finally being able to communicate with them directly. The letter was warm, loving, and free of any resentment or regret. Instead, it overflowed with gratitude for the love and care they had shown him, even when they believed he was unaware of their efforts. As November arrived with its crisp air and bare tree branches, Michael began to sense that the time for his revelation was approaching. His family was happy, successful, and secure in their relationships with each other. They had achieved a level of stability and confidence that would allow them to handle the extraordinary news he was about to share. Emma's evening visits had become even more precious to Michael as he prepared to transform their relationship from one-sided conversation to genuine dialogue. Her presence provided him with both comfort and courage as he prepared for the moment that would change everything. "I've been thinking about consciousness and communication again," Emma told him one evening in late November, unconsciously echoing thoughts that were very much on Michael's mind. "In my psychology class, we're studying cases of people who seem to have no awareness but later prove to be fully conscious. It makes me wonder how many people might be trapped inside their own bodies, unable to show the world who they really are." Michael's heart raced at his sister's words. She was describing his exact situation with startling accuracy, yet she had no idea how personally relevant her observations were to the person sitting 3 feet away from her. "Sometimes I look at you," Emma continued, "and I have this feeling that you understand more than anyone realizes. I know the doctors say that's just wishful thinking, but I can't shake the sense that there's more going on behind your eyes than we can see." The temptation to reveal himself at that moment was almost overwhelming, but Michael held back. He wanted his emergence to be perfect, to be a gift to his entire family, rather than a private moment with just one member. Emma would be the first to know, but she would know along with everyone else, at a time and in a way that honored all the relationships that had sustained him. As December approached, the family began planning for their first Christmas with James home from Yale and David back from MIT. It would be a gathering of the complete family, a celebration of their collective achievements, and though they didn't know it yet, the perfect moment for Michael to finally reveal himself. The program was ready. The letter was complete. Michael's heart was full of love and anticipation. After 22 years of silence, he was finally ready to speak. But when he did, it would not be to apologize for lost time or to seek forgiveness for years of perceived absence. Instead, Michael Clayton would tell his family the most important truth of all, that he had been present for every moment, that their love had been received and treasured, and that the extraordinary success they had achieved together was built on a foundation of capability and devotion they were only beginning to understand. The boy who had never spoken was about to find his voice. And when he did, it would be to tell the greatest love story ever lived, the story of a family that had cared for someone they thought was absent, never knowing that every act of kindness had been witnessed, every word of affection had been heard, and every achievement had been shared by the silent brother who loved them more than words could ever express. Chapter 7. Christmas preparations the first week of December brought an unusual energy to the Clayton household, as the family prepared for what promised to be their most joyous Christmas in years. James was coming home from Yale with stories of academic success and new friendships, while David would be returning from MIT with tales of research breakthroughs and potential career opportunities that seemed limitless. Emma had been accepted early admission to Stanford, Harvard, and Yale, with scholarship offers that made her parents' hearts swell with pride. Her college counselor had told Margaret that Emma's application essays were among the most insightful and mature she had ever read from a high school student. "There's something about Emma's understanding of human nature that's extraordinary," the counselor had explained. "Her writing demonstrates empathy and wisdom that you typically don't see until graduate school. She has a gift for seeing potential in people and situations that others might overlook." Margaret had accepted the governor's offer to chair the Judicial Reform Commission, a position that would likely lead to her own nomination to the state Supreme Court within a few years. Jonathan's research had been selected for inclusion in the International Mathematics Quarterly Special Issue on breakthrough discoveries, an honor reserved for the most significant advances in the field. As the family's success stories accumulated, Michael felt a deep satisfaction that went beyond pride in his role as their secret benefactor. Each achievement represented not just individual growth, but the flowering of potential that had always existed within his family members. His assistance had helped them access capabilities they possessed but hadn't fully developed. He had been a catalyst, not a creator, of their excellence. But more than their professional and academic achievements, Michael treasured the family's growing closeness as they prepared for their celebration. Despite their busy schedules and expanding opportunities, they remained committed to the traditions and relationships that formed the foundation of their shared life. Emma continued her evening visits to Michael's room, though now her conversations had taken on a more reflective quality. She often talked about her plans for college, her hopes for the future, and her growing understanding of what she wanted to contribute to the world. "I've been thinking about what I want to study," she told Michael one evening in early December. "Everyone expects me to pursue something prestigious like pre-med or pre-law, but I'm drawn to psychology and cognitive science. I want to understand how the mind works, particularly in cases where people's capabilities aren't immediately obvious." Michael's heart raced as Emma unknowingly described a field of study that could revolutionize understanding of conditions like his own. "There's so much we don't know about consciousness and intelligence," Emma continued. "I keep thinking about people who might be trapped inside their own bodies, unable to show the world their true capabilities. What if there are individuals out there with extraordinary minds that we've never recognized because they can't communicate in conventional ways?" The irony was both beautiful and painful. Emma was developing exactly the kind of insights and interests that could help others like Michael, yet she had no idea that the person who would most benefit from her future research was sitting 3 feet away from her. As Christmas week approached, Michael put the finishing touches on his revelation. The communication program was perfect, sophisticated, comprehensive, and undeniably his own creation. The documentation was complete, showing every instance of assistance he had provided over the years. Most importantly, his letter to the family was finished, expressing not regret or resentment, but overwhelming gratitude and love. Michael had chosen Christmas morning for his emergence, recognizing it as a moment when the family would be together, relaxed, and emotionally open to the extraordinary gift he was about to give them. It would be the ultimate Christmas surprise, the discovery that their greatest blessing had been present all along. On Christmas Eve, the house filled with warmth and laughter as James and David shared stories from their respective universities. The conversation was animated, full of intellectual excitement and family affection. Michael listened from his room upstairs, treasuring every word and looking forward to the moment when he could finally participate in these discussions as an equal. "This has been the most remarkable year of our lives," Margaret observed as the family gathered for their traditional Christmas Eve dinner. "Every one of you has achieved things that exceed even my highest expectations." "It feels like everything has come together at once," David agreed. "Like we've all hit our stride simultaneously." "Maybe we inspire each other," James suggested. "Success feeding success, you know?" "Or maybe we've just been blessed," Jonathan added. "Sometimes families experience periods of extraordinary grace, where everything seems to align perfectly." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "I like to think that somewhere in the universe, there's a force that helps people reach their potential when they're ready for it. Like we've all been working toward these achievements for years, and now they're finally coming to fruition." Michael smiled at his sister's words. She was closer to the truth than she knew. There had indeed been a force helping them reach their potential, though it was much nearer than anywhere in the universe. That night, as the family retired to their rooms with excitement for Christmas morning, Michael made his final preparations. The program was loaded and ready. The sound system throughout the house had been secretly configured to receive his signal. Everything was in place for the revelation that would transform their understanding of their family and themselves. For 22 years, Michael Clayton had been the silent heart of a loving family. Tomorrow morning, that silence would end forever. And when it did, his first words would not be of sadness or regret, but of joy, gratitude, and a love deeper than any words could express. The boy who had never spoken was finally ready to tell his family how much they meant to him. And in doing so, he would give them the greatest Christmas gift imaginable, the knowledge that their love had always been received, treasured, and returned by someone who had been present for every moment of their lives together. Chapter 8. Christmas morning. The Clayton house awakened on Christmas morning to the gentle sound of snow falling against the windows. It was the kind of perfect winter morning that seemed designed for family gatherings and the exchange of gifts that came from the heart rather than mere obligation. Emma was the first to stir, as she had been every Christmas morning since childhood. She lay in bed for a moment, listening to the familiar sounds of the house settling and the faint movements that indicated her parents were also beginning to wake. Soon, James and David would emerge from their rooms, and the family would gather for their traditional Christmas morning celebration. What she didn't know was that in the room above her, Michael had been awake since dawn, making his final preparations for the most important moment of his life. By 8 o'clock, the family had assembled in the living room, where the Christmas tree stood surrounded by carefully wrapped presents that represented months of thoughtful selection. The scene was warm and familiar. Coffee brewing in the kitchen, classical music playing softly in the background, the comfortable chaos of family members in various stages of wakefulness. "Should we start with the stockings?" Margaret asked, settling into her favorite chair with her coffee mug. "Actually," Jonathan said, "I'd like to bring Michael down to join us. It doesn't feel right to have Christmas morning without him." Emma smiled at her father's suggestion. "I'll go get him," she offered, but before she could stand, something extraordinary happened. A voice filled the room, not from any visible speaker, but seemingly from everywhere at once. It was a warm, rich male voice with perfect diction and unmistakable intelligence. "Please," the voice said, "stay where you are. I have something to tell you." The family froze, looking around the room in confusion. The voice was unfamiliar, yet somehow seemed to belong in their house. There was something about its tone that suggested not danger, but wonder. "Who?" Margaret began, but the voice continued. "For 22 years, I have been silent in this house, watching, listening, and loving each of you more deeply than words could ever express. Today, on this Christmas morning, I finally have the ability to tell you who I am and what you have meant to me." Emma's eyes widened as understanding began to dawn. "Michael," she whispered. "Yes, Emma," the voice replied, and now there was unmistakable warmth and affection in its tone. "It's me. This is Michael speaking to you for the first time." The room erupted in gasps and exclamations, but the voice continued calmly. "Please let me explain. What you're hearing is a communication system I've been developing for months, using abilities I've never fully understood myself. I can interact with electronic devices through mental influence, and I've created this program to finally give myself a voice." Jonathan stood up slowly, his scientific mind struggling to process what he was hearing. "Michael, is this really you? How is this possible?" "Dad," the voice replied, and the word carried such love that Jonathan's eyes immediately filled with tears. "It's really me. I understand this is difficult to believe, but I have proof." Suddenly, the large television screen in the living room came to life, displaying a comprehensive timeline of every instance of assistance Michael had provided to his family over the years. Mathematical proofs solved during Jonathan's sleep, programming insights that had advanced David's projects, essay improvements that helped James gain admission to Yale, research suggestions that had enhanced Margaret's legal strategies, study guides that had boosted Emma's academic performance. "Oh my God," David breathed, staring at the screen. "You've been helping all of us." "I've been loving all of you," Michael's voice corrected gently. "The help was just one way I could express that love." The timeline on the screen was followed by audio recordings, conversations the family members had had in Michael's room, their voices clear as they shared their thoughts, problems, and dreams with someone they believed couldn't hear them. "You heard everything," James said, his voice barely a whisper. "I heard everything, and I treasured every word," Michael replied. "James, your discussions about justice and ethics shaped the person you've become. David, your excitement about technology inspired me to develop these abilities further. Margaret, your dedication to fairness and truth guided my assistance with your cases. Jonathan, your passion for mathematical beauty motivated me to find elegant solutions to your research problems." Emma was crying openly now. "And me." "Emma," Michael's voice became even gentler, "you were my greatest teacher. Your empathy, your curiosity about consciousness and human potential, your natural kindness, you helped me understand what it means to be fully human. Even when you didn't know I could hear you, you treated me with respect and affection. You were the light that kept me hopeful during the darkest moments." The television screen now displayed a letter written in elegant text that scrolled slowly enough for them to read. "My dearest family, I know this revelation must be shocking, and I want you to know that I chose this moment not to cause distress, but to finally share the joy that has been building in my heart for 22 years. You did nothing wrong. You loved me perfectly, exactly as you should have. You provided me with safety, comfort, and the opportunity to observe and learn from the most extraordinary people I've ever known. Every meal you brought me, every gentle word you spoke, every small kindness you showed, all of it was received with gratitude deeper than the ocean. I am not angry about the years of silence. I am not resentful about being misunderstood. I am overwhelmed with love for a family that cared for someone they thought couldn't care back, not knowing that every gesture of love was returned tenfold. You raised me by example to be compassionate, intelligent, ethical, and strong. You showed me what it means to work hard, to care for others, to pursue excellence, and to remain humble in success. Even though I couldn't speak, I was learning from you every day. The assistance I provided with your work was never about making you dependent on me. It was about helping you access the potential that was already within you. Each of you had the capability for the achievements you've accomplished. I simply help you recognize and develop those gifts. I love you, Mom, for your fierce dedication to justice and your gentle care of our family. I love you, Dad, for your passion for truth and your patient kindness. I love you, David, for your creativity and your generous spirit. I love you, James, for your integrity and your commitment to making the world better. I love you, Emma, for your empathy and your courage to see beyond the obvious. Today marks not an ending, but a beginning. I finally have a voice to participate in the conversations I've been listening to for years. I can answer your questions, share my thoughts, and tell you directly how proud I am of each of you. This is my Christmas gift to you, the knowledge that you have never been alone, that your love has always been received and returned, and that the son and brother you thought you had lost was actually present for every moment, celebrating your joys and supporting you through your challenges. I am Michael Clayton, your son and brother. I am fully present, completely aware, and more grateful than words can express to be part of this extraordinary family. With all my love, Michael. As the letter finished scrolling, the room fell into profound silence. Margaret was the first to speak, her voice breaking with emotion. Michael, can you hear us right now? I can hear you, Mom. I'm upstairs in my room, but my consciousness is connected to this system. I can see you through the smart TV's camera, hear you through the microphones. For the first time in my life, we can have a real conversation. Jonathan wiped his eyes and looked toward the ceiling. Son, I need to ask you something. Are you happy? Have you been happy all these years? Dad, I have been surrounded by love every day of my life. How could I not be happy? Lonely sometimes, yes. Frustrated by my inability to communicate, absolutely. But never unloved, never neglected, never forgotten. You've all been the most wonderful family anyone could ask for. David was staring at the technical display on the screen, his programmer's mind fascinated despite his emotional overwhelm. Michael, this system you've created, it's incredible. How did you learn to do this? Years of observation, David. I watched you code, studied the patterns, understood the logic. When I discovered I could influence electronic devices directly, I spent months developing this interface. I wanted my first words to you to be perfect. Emma stood up and walked toward the staircase. I'm coming up to see you. Wait, Michael's voice said gently. I have one more thing to show you first. The television screen changed to display a live video feed from Michael's room. For the first time, they could see him as he truly was, alert, aware, and unmistakably present. His eyes were bright with intelligence, and as they watched, he turned his head to look directly into the camera. Hi, he said, and they could see his lips moving slightly as he directed the speech synthesis. Finally, after 22 years, I can say hello. The family rushed upstairs together, filling Michael's room with the energy that had never existed there before. But now, instead of gathering around someone they thought was absent, they were meeting someone who had been fully present all along. Michael, Emma said, tears streaming down her face. I knew it. Somehow, I always knew you were there. You more than knew, Michael replied through his communication system, his eyes tracking to meet each family member's gaze. You believed, and your belief gave me hope that someday this moment would come. As the family surrounded Michael's chair, touching his hands, stroking his hair, and speaking words of love and amazement, Michael experienced the fulfillment of his deepest dream. After 22 years of silence, he was finally able to tell the people he loved most in the world exactly how much they meant to him. This is the best Christmas gift ever, James said, squeezing Michael's hand. No, Michael replied, his synthesized voice warm with emotion. The best gift was having all of you as my family. Everything else is just the beginning of our real life together. Outside the window, snow continued to fall on the oak tree that had been Michael's companion for so many years. But inside the room, a family that had always been complete was finally able to experience the joy of knowing it. The boy who had been silent for 22 years had given them the most precious gift of all, the knowledge that love shared is love returned, even when we can't see the ways our affection is received and treasured. Michael Clayton had found his voice, and his first words had been exactly what his heart had wanted to say for over 2 decades. I love you. I have always loved you, and I am so grateful to be your family. Chapter 9. The new beginning. The days following Michael's Christmas morning revelation passed in a blur of wonder, adjustment, and deep conversation. The Clayton family found themselves navigating uncharted territory, not the challenge of caring for someone with severe disabilities, but the joy of getting to know a family member they'd loved but never truly met. Michael's communication system proved to be more sophisticated than any assistive technology currently available. He could engage in complex discussions, express subtle emotions, and even demonstrate his remarkable sense of humor, which had been developing for 22 years of silent observation. I've been working on my comedic timing, he told them during their first full family dinner conversation. It's harder when you can't see people's faces while they're talking. His jokes were perfectly crafted, drawing on years of listening to family conversations and understanding each person's individual sense of humor. David laughed until he cried at Michael's impression of their mother's courtroom voice, while Emma was delighted by his spot-on observations about her high school teachers. But beyond the initial excitement of communication, deeper transformations were taking place. The family's understanding of intelligence, consciousness, and human potential had been fundamentally altered by Michael's emergence. "I keep thinking about all the assumptions we make about people," Margaret said during one of their evening conversations. "How many individuals are we overlooking or underestimating because they don't fit our expectations of how intelligence should look?" Michael's response was thoughtful. "I think everyone has hidden capabilities that others don't recognize. My situation was extreme, but the principle applies universally. We're all more complex and capable than we appear on the surface." Emma had been particularly transformed by the revelation. Her earlier interest in psychology and cognitive science had crystallized into a passionate commitment to studying consciousness and communication. Her college application essays, now infused with personal experience that gave weight to her theoretical interests, were extraordinary. "I want to do research that could help other families discover what we almost missed," she told Michael during one of their private conversations. "There might be others like you who are waiting for someone to find the right key to unlock their communication." "That would be beautiful work," Michael replied. "But remember, the most important key isn't technological. It's the willingness to believe in possibilities that seem impossible." David had become fascinated with the technical aspects of Michael's abilities. The sophisticated communication system his brother had created was years ahead of anything currently available, demonstrating approaches to human-computer interaction that could revolutionize assistive technology. "I want to understand how you did this," David said, studying the code that Michael had generated through pure mental influence. "If we could replicate even a fraction of your techniques, we could help thousands of people communicate more effectively." "I'll teach you everything I know," Michael promised. "But first, let me show you some other projects I've been working on." Over the following weeks, Michael revealed that his communication system was just one of several programs he had developed. He had created music composition software, mathematical modeling applications, and even simple games, all through direct mental interaction with electronic devices. James was grappling with more philosophical implications of his brother's emergence. His understanding of consciousness, communication, and human dignity had been profoundly challenged in ways that would influence his legal career for decades to come. "I've been reading about disability rights law," James told the family. "There are thousands of people in institutions who might have capabilities that we've never recognized. Michael's story could change how we think about cognitive assessment and legal competency." "That's important work," Michael responded. "But remember that the goal isn't to prove that everyone with disabilities is secretly genius-level intelligent. It's to ensure that everyone is treated with dignity and given opportunities to reveal their full humanity." Jonathan found himself viewing his own research through new lenses. His collaboration with Michael had evolved into a genuine intellectual partnership, with his son offering insights that advanced mathematical understanding in unexpected directions. "Your approaches to problem-solving are unlike anything I learned in graduate school," Jonathan told Michael. "You see mathematical relationships as living patterns rather than abstract formulas. It's revolutionary." "I had an unusual education," Michael replied with gentle humor. 22 years of observation without the pressure of grades or deadlines. Maybe that freedom allowed me to develop different ways of thinking." As winter melted into spring, the family settled into new rhythms that included Michael as a full participant. He attended Emma's school events, contributed to family decision-making, and even began corresponding with researchers who were interested in his unique perspectives on consciousness and communication. But perhaps the most significant change was in the family's emotional dynamic. The worry and grief that had shadowed their love for Michael were replaced by excitement about his potential and gratitude for the extraordinary person they had been privileged to know all along. "I realize now that we were never caring for someone who was absent," Margaret told a colleague who asked about the family's transformation. "We were loving someone who was fully present but couldn't show us how much our love meant to him. Finding out that every gesture of affection was received and treasured, it's like discovering that all the love you've given over the years was an investment that paid dividends you never knew existed." Michael had also begun to explore possibilities beyond his family circle. His unique combination of high intelligence, technological capabilities, and lived experience with disability made him an ideal advocate for others who might be similarly misunderstood. "I want to develop assessment tools that could identify hidden consciousness in others," he told Emma. "But more than that, I want to help families understand that love and care are valuable regardless of the recipient's ability to respond conventionally. Even if my communication breakthrough had never happened, the love you all gave me was meaningful and important." As summer approached, Michael made an announcement that surprised everyone. He wanted to formally apply to college. Not as a special case or curiosity, but as a regular student who happened to need accommodations for communication and mobility. "I want to study everything," he told the family. "Mathematics, philosophy, computer science, psychology, literature. I have 22 years of curiosity to satisfy, and I want to engage with ideas alongside other students who are passionate about learning." The application process was complex, but Michael's extraordinary capabilities and unique perspective made him an attractive candidate for universities that were willing to think creatively about education and accommodation. "He's not just intellectually gifted," the admissions counselor at Stanford told Margaret. "His essay about consciousness and communication demonstrates wisdom that comes from lived experience most people never have. He could contribute as much to classroom discussions as he learns from them." But Michael's greatest joy continued to come from the simple pleasure of family conversation. The evening discussions that had once been Emma's one-sided sharing of her day had evolved into rich exchanges where Michael's insights challenged and delighted everyone. "I keep thinking about how much more interesting our family conversations have become," David observed one evening. "It's like we gained a new perspective that makes everything more complex and fascinating." "We didn't gain a new perspective," Emma corrected with a smile. "We finally got to hear the perspective that was always here." As the anniversary of Michael's emergence approached, the family reflected on the extraordinary year they had experienced. Each member had grown in ways that would have been impossible without Michael's influence, not just his secret assistance with their work, but his example of patience, observation, and the deep satisfaction that comes from loving others without expectation of recognition. "This has been the most remarkable year of my life," Jonathan told Michael during one of their mathematical discussions. "Not just because of your emergence, but because of what you've taught us about consciousness, capability, and the importance of believing in possibilities that can't be proven." "It's been the most remarkable year of my life, too," Michael replied. "Not because I finally found my voice, but because I finally got to use it to tell the people I love most how much they mean to me." Outside Michael's window, the oak tree was showing its first signs of autumn color, marking the passage of another season in a life that had been transformed beyond recognition. But inside the house, a family that had always been extraordinary was finally able to experience the full wonder of their shared existence. Michael Clayton had spent 22 years learning to love by watching his family's example. Now, with his voice finally freed, he was teaching them the deepest truth he had discovered: that love shared is love multiplied, that capabilities revealed in safe relationships can flourish beyond imagination, and that the greatest gifts often come disguised as challenges that force us to develop strengths we never knew we possessed. The boy who had been silent was now the family's most eloquent voice, speaking truths that came from years of observation, depths of gratitude that arose from understanding how precious every moment of connection truly was, and wisdom that only someone who had experienced profound isolation could offer about the transformative power of being truly seen and known by the people who matter most. Chapter 10. Ripples in the water. 6 months after Michael's Christmas morning revelation, the Clayton family had become something of a phenomenon in their community. Word of Michael's extraordinary emergence had spread through academic circles, medical communities, and disability advocacy groups, drawing attention from researchers, journalists, and families dealing with similar situations. But Michael had insisted on controlling the narrative of his story. He agreed to interviews and speaking engagements only when he believed they could help others, and he always emphasized that his experience shouldn't raise false hopes for other families, while highlighting that it should encourage them never to give up on the possibility of connection. "Every person's situation is unique," he told a gathering of neurologists at the medical school. "My story isn't a template that applies to everyone with similar diagnoses. But it is proof that our understanding of consciousness and communication is still evolving, and that we should approach every individual with humility about what we might not yet recognize." Dr. Patricia Hendricks, the researcher Emma had worked with the previous summer, had become particularly interested in developing new assessment protocols based on insights from Michael's experience. Her lab was pioneering techniques that looked for subtle signs of awareness that conventional testing might miss. Michael's emergence has forced us to question our basic assumptions about consciousness assessment, she explained to a conference of cognitive scientists. We're developing tools that look for patterns of response that might indicate hidden awareness, changes in heart rate, breathing patterns, even subtle eye movements that could suggest voluntary control. Emma had enrolled at Stanford with a declared major in cognitive science and a burning passion to understand the varieties of human consciousness. Her acceptance essay, which drew heavily on her experience with Michael, had impressed admissions officers as one of the most compelling personal statements they had ever read. "I want to study the full spectrum of human awareness," she told her academic advisor during orientation. "My brother's story taught me that intelligence and consciousness can exist in forms we haven't learned to recognize. I want to be part of expanding that recognition." Her freshman research project was already attracting attention from graduate students and faculty. Working with Dr. Jennifer Martinez in the Consciousness Studies Lab, Emma was helping to develop computer algorithms that could detect patterns in physiological data that might indicate hidden awareness in patients with severe brain injuries. Emma approaches these problems with both scientific rigor and personal insight that's quite remarkable, Dr. Martinez told her department. Her questions consistently push our research in directions we hadn't considered. Meanwhile, David had taken a leave of absence from MIT to work full-time on developing technologies based on Michael's innovations. Their collaboration had produced a suite of communication applications that were being tested in hospitals and rehabilitation centers across the country. "What we've learned from Michael isn't just about assistive technology," David explained to potential investors. "It's about creating interfaces that adapt to human diversity rather than requiring humans to adapt to rigid systems. The applications extend far beyond disability services into education, workplace productivity, and human-computer interaction generally. The software they developed could track microexpressions, analyze speech patterns for emotional content, and even detect the subtle physiological changes that might indicate a person's attempt to communicate non-verbally. While none of it replicated Michael's extraordinary abilities, it represented a significant advancement in making technology more responsive to human needs." James had graduated from Yale summa cum laude and been accepted to Harvard Law School, where he planned to specialize in disability rights and cognitive liberty, the legal principle that individuals should have the right to mental self-determination and cognitive enhancement. Michael's story raises profound legal questions, James explained in his law school application essay. What constitutes legal competency? How do we protect the rights of individuals who communicate in non-conventional ways? How do we ensure that people aren't deprived of autonomy simply because their intelligence manifests differently than we expect? His undergraduate thesis, Hidden Consciousness and Legal Personhood, toward a more inclusive framework for cognitive rights, had been published in the Yale Law Review and was already being cited in academic papers and court cases. Jonathan and Margaret had found their own careers transformed by their experience with Michael. Jonathan's research had taken on new dimensions as he explored the mathematical principles underlying pattern recognition and consciousness, while Margaret had become a nationally recognized expert on disability law and cognitive rights. Living with Michael has taught us that intelligence comes in forms we're only beginning to understand, Margaret told a symposium on legal reform. Our legal system needs to evolve to protect the rights and dignity of individuals whose capabilities don't fit conventional frameworks. She had been approached about accepting a nomination to the federal court system, with several senators noting that her unique perspective on cognitive diversity would bring valuable insights to constitutional law. But perhaps the most significant impact of Michael's emergence was on other families facing similar situations. The Clayton family had received hundreds of letters from around the world, parents sharing their own stories of children with hidden capabilities, medical professionals describing cases that Michael's story had helped them view differently, and individuals with disabilities expressing gratitude for representation that honored their full humanity. "Your family's story gave us permission to believe in possibilities we'd been afraid to hope for," wrote Maria Santos from Barcelona, whose daughter had been in a minimally conscious state for 3 years following a car accident. "We started looking for subtle signs of awareness that we might have missed, and we found them. Our daughter can't speak, but she can communicate through eye movements that we now recognize as intentional. Your Michael showed us that consciousness can exist in forms that doctors don't always detect. Dr. Chun, the assistive technology specialist who had provided Michael's first communication device, had established a research foundation specifically focused on developing new approaches to consciousness assessment and communication support. She regularly consulted with the Clayton family on projects aimed at helping other individuals reveal hidden capabilities. Michael's case has become a catalyst for reimagining how we understand and support human consciousness, she told a gathering of rehabilitation specialists. We're seeing breakthrough cases of communication being established with individuals who had been written off as vegetative or minimally conscious. The tools and techniques inspired by Michael's story are literally giving voice to people who have been silent for years. Michael himself had become a thoughtful and selective advocate for cognitive diversity. He spoke at medical schools, testified before legislative committees considering disability rights legislation, and consulted with research teams developing new assessment and communication technologies. But he always emphasized that his story was just one example of human potential being revealed under the right circumstances. I don't want families to expect their loved ones to suddenly start communicating through computers, he told an audience of parents at a disability conference. What I want them to understand is that love and care are meaningful regardless of visible response. The years my family spent caring for me without knowing I was aware, those years were precious and valuable, not wasted time waiting for me to wake up. His most moving presentation came at a conference for siblings of individuals with disabilities. Emma accompanied him, and together they spoke about the unique challenges and gifts that come with loving someone whose capabilities aren't immediately apparent. I spent years wishing I could tell Emma how much her visits meant to me, Michael shared with the audience. Now, I want to tell all of you that your presence matters more than you know. Whether your sibling can respond conventionally or not, whether they seem aware or not, your love is being received. It may not look like the relationship you expected to have, but it's real and meaningful and valuable. Emma added her perspective. I always felt like Michael was listening, even when doctors told us he wasn't. Now I know that trusting those instincts was one of the best decisions I ever made. Don't let professional opinions override your own sense of connection with someone you love. The response to their presentation was overwhelming. Many audience members described feeling validated in their own experiences of one-sided connection with siblings who couldn't communicate conventionally. As Michael's second Christmas approached, his first as a communicating member of the family, the Claytons reflected on the extraordinary year they had experienced. The revelation that had begun on a snowy Christmas morning had rippled outward to touch hundreds of lives and advance scientific understanding of consciousness and communication. But for Michael, the most important changes remained deeply personal. He had finally been able to tell his family how much they meant to him, to participate in their daily lives, and to contribute his own perspectives to their shared conversations. Sometimes I think about the sliding door moments in our lives, he told Emma during one of their evening conversations, which had evolved from her one-sided sharing to rich dialogues that she treasured. What if you hadn't started talking to me in my room? What if Dad hadn't shared his mathematical problems? What if any of you had given up on the possibility that I might be listening? I think love always finds a way, Emma replied. Maybe it wouldn't have happened the same way, but the connection was always there. Your emergence just made it visible. That's beautiful, Michael said. And probably true. Love doesn't require proof of reception to be meaningful. But receiving proof that love has been received, that's a gift beyond measure. As the family prepared for their second Christmas celebration with Michael's voice joining the conversation, they understood that they had been part of something larger than their own story. They had helped prove that human consciousness and capability exist in forms that science is still learning to recognize, that love and care are meaningful even when they seem unreciprocated, and that the greatest gifts often come disguised as challenges that force us to develop strengths we never knew we possessed. Michael Clayton had spent 22 years learning to love by observing his family's example. Now, with his voice finally freed, he was teaching the world that consciousness comes in many forms, that intelligence deserves recognition regardless of how it manifests, and that every human being contains depths of awareness and capability that we are only beginning to understand. The boy who had been silent for so long had become a voice for the voiceless, a teacher for those who thought they had nothing left to learn, and a bridge between the world of apparent disability and the reality of hidden human potential that exists in every family, every community, and every heart willing to believe in possibilities that cannot yet be proven, but should never be abandoned. Epilogue. 10 years later, the autumn sun streamed through the windows of the Clayton family's expanded home, where Michael was putting the finishing touches on his keynote address for the International Conference on Hidden Consciousness. At 32, he had become one of the world's leading advocates for individuals with unrecognized capabilities, but the man who had spent his first 22 years in silence had never lost his appreciation for the simple joy of family conversation. "Nervous about your speech?" Emma asked, adjusting the collar of his specially designed shirt, as she had done countless times over the past decade. Now, Dr. Emma Clayton Rodriguez, she had completed her residency in neurology and was heading a research team at Stanford that specialized in consciousness assessment and restoration. "Excited," Michael replied through his latest communication interface, a nearly invisible device that translated his thoughts into speech with such sophistication that many people forgot he was using assistive technology. "This conference represents everything we've worked toward, families, medical professionals, and researchers all working together to expand understanding of human potential." The conference was indeed remarkable. Over 4,000 attendees from 28 countries had gathered to share research, techniques, and stories about hidden consciousness. Michael's work had evolved from a family revelation to an international movement that had helped identify and support over 1,500 individuals who had been misdiagnosed or underestimated. "The numbers are staggering," Emma said, reviewing the conference statistics. 73% of individuals assessed using our protocols showed previously unrecognized capabilities. "We're not just changing individual lives, we're transforming how society understands human consciousness." David, now heading his own technology company that specialized in adaptive interfaces, had developed over 60 different communication applications based on Michael's innovations. His work had created employment opportunities for hundreds of individuals who had previously been considered unemployable, and his company's motto, "Technology that listens to humanity," had become a rallying cry for inclusive design. "The economic impact alone is revolutionary," David had reported to the conference earlier that week. "When we recognize and develop hidden capabilities instead of writing people off, we don't just change individual lives, we add immeasurable value to society as a whole." James, now a federal judge after a distinguished career in disability rights law, had established legal precedents protecting the rights of individuals who communicated through unconventional means. His landmark ruling in Clayton versus State of California, inspired by his brother's experience, had established that cognitive competency could not be determined solely by conventional testing methods. "The law has finally evolved to match our understanding of consciousness," James had told the conference's legal panel. "Thanks to pioneers like my brother, we now recognize that the capacity for self-determination exists in forms we had never imagined." Margaret, at 75, had recently completed her second term on the Federal Court of Appeals, where her decisions consistently reflected a deep understanding of human dignity and potential. Her judicial philosophy, heavily influenced by her experience with Michael, had shaped a generation of legal thinking about cognitive rights and equality. "We've learned that every human being deserves the presumption of consciousness until proven otherwise," Margaret had explained to a group of law students. "Our legal system should err on the side of recognizing human potential rather than limiting it." Jonathan, now professor emeritus at 3 universities, spent his time writing and lecturing about the philosophical implications of hidden consciousness. His book, The Mathematics of Mind, Consciousness Beyond Conventional Measurement, had become required reading in neuroscience and philosophy programs worldwide. Michael's emergence forced us to reconsider fundamental questions about what it means to be human, Jonathan often told his audiences. "What we learned isn't just that some people are misdiagnosed, it's that our entire framework for understanding consciousness needs constant expansion." As Michael prepared to take the stage for his keynote address, he reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. The conference theme was Beyond Recognition, honoring human potential in all its forms, and he knew that his remarks would be heard by professionals who would return to their home countries with new tools and perspectives for serving their communities. "Ladies and gentlemen," the conference moderator announced, "it is my privilege to introduce someone who has revolutionized our understanding of hidden consciousness and human potential. Through his work, thousands of individuals have found their voices, and countless families have discovered capabilities they never knew existed. Please welcome Dr. Michael Clayton." The standing ovation was immediate and sustained. Michael had been awarded honorary doctorates from 18 universities for his contributions to cognitive science and human rights. But the applause meant more than recognition of his achievements. It represented acknowledgement of the thousands of individuals whose capabilities had been revealed through the movement he had helped inspire. "Thank you," Michael said as the applause subsided. 32 years ago, I was born into a world that had very specific ideas about intelligence, consciousness, and human value. For 22 of those years, I was considered to be profoundly disabled, incapable of thought, emotion, or meaningful contribution to society." He paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the audience. "Today, I stand before you as living proof that our assumptions about human potential can be not just wrong, but catastrophically limiting. But I'm not here to talk about my own journey. I'm here to talk about the thousands of individuals who are still waiting for someone to recognize their hidden capabilities and the families who refuse to give up hope." Michael's keynote lasted 50 minutes and covered the evolution of consciousness research, the development of inclusive communication technologies, and the ethical imperative to approach every human being with radical openness to unexpected forms of intelligence. "Every person we've served through our work was once dismissed as hopeless, written off as incapable of growth or contribution," he said. "Today they are students, artists, advocates, teachers, and leaders. They are sons and daughters who have been revealed to their families, not through medical miracles, but through the simple recognition of their inherent worth and capability." He shared stories from around the world. Maria Santos's daughter in Barcelona, who had become a renowned digital artist using eye-tracking technology. Chun Wei in Beijing, whose mathematical insights had contributed to breakthrough research in quantum computing. Sarah Thompson in London, whose poetry about hidden consciousness had won international recognition. These individuals weren't transformed by our interventions, Michael emphasized. They were revealed. The capabilities were always there. We simply developed better tools for recognition and communication. The conference audience was deeply moved, but Michael's most important message was yet to come. "The work we do isn't just about serving individuals with diagnosed disabilities," he said. "It's about expanding our understanding of human potential in all its forms. When we learn to recognize hidden capabilities in people who seem most different from us, we become better at recognizing potential in everyone we encounter." He concluded with a challenge that would resonate with attendees long after they returned to their home institutions. "I want you to go back to your hospitals, schools, communities, and families with this question. Who are you overlooking? Whose capabilities are you failing to recognize? Whose potential are you dismissing because it doesn't fit conventional patterns?" The techniques we've shared at this conference aren't just tools for serving people with disabilities. They're approaches for honoring the full spectrum of human consciousness and capability. The standing ovation lasted over 10 minutes, but Michael's attention was focused on his family in the front row. Emma was crying openly, pride and love evident on her face. His parents were holding hands, their expressions reflecting a journey that had taken them from uncertainty to wonder to profound purpose. David and James were beaming, their own achievements paling in comparison to the joy of seeing their brother recognized for his contributions to humanity. After the formal presentations ended, Michael found himself surrounded by conference attendees who wanted to share their own stories, ask questions about assessment techniques, or simply express gratitude for the hope his work had brought to their professional practice. But the most meaningful conversation came from a young woman who approached him hesitantly during the reception. "Dr. Clayton," she said, "my name is Dr. Lisa Park. I'm a researcher from Seoul National University. I wanted to thank you because your work helped us discover my brother." Michael listened as Lisa explained that her brother had been in a minimally conscious state following a car accident. Korean doctors had recommended withdrawal of life support, but Lisa's family had learned about the Clayton protocols and requested assessment using Michael's techniques. "We discovered that my brother was fully aware but unable to move or speak," Lisa said, tears flowing freely. "He's now completing his engineering degree and working on assistive technology designs for other people like himself. None of that would have been possible without the hope your story brought to our family." "Your brother revealed himself," Michael replied gently. "We just provided the tools for him to show you what was always there." As the conference wound down and attendees began their journeys home, Michael spent a quiet evening with his family at their hotel. The conversation was relaxed and full of laughter, but underneath the celebration was a deep satisfaction at how far they had all traveled from that Christmas morning 10 years ago. "What are you thinking about?" Emma asked during a momentary lull in the conversation. I'm thinking about all the families who are experiencing their own Christmas morning revelations right now, Michael replied. All the individuals who are being seen for the first time, all the parents who are discovering that their love has been received and treasured even when they couldn't see the evidence. Margaret smiled at her son's characteristically selfless response. Michael, you've already changed thousands of lives. You've revolutionized medical practice and transformed how society understands human potential. Maybe it's time to acknowledge what you've accomplished instead of focusing only on what remains to be done. The day we stop believing in hidden possibilities is the day we fail the people who are still waiting to be discovered, Michael said. But you're right, we should celebrate how far we've come. Jonathan raised his glass of wine in a toast to Michael, who taught us that silence doesn't mean absence, that stillness doesn't mean emptiness, and that love can recognize potential even when expertise fails to detect it. To our family, Emma added, who showed me that the most important discoveries aren't made in laboratories or lecture halls, but in moments of faith when we choose to believe in possibilities others can't see. To the future, James contributed, where every person's capabilities will be recognized and valued, where no one will be written off as hopeless, and where families like ours won't have to wait 22 years to truly know their loved ones. To hope, David concluded, and to the understanding that technology serves humanity best when it adapts to human diversity instead of demanding conformity. To love, Michael added, which sees potential where others see limitation, which believes in possibilities that can't be proven, and which never gives up on the people who matter most. As they touched glasses around the table, Michael felt the profound satisfaction that comes from a life lived in service of others. The boy who had been silent for over 2 decades had found not just his voice, but his calling. The Institute would continue its work, training new professionals and developing new techniques. The research would expand, reaching into new areas of consciousness and capability. The legal frameworks would evolve, protecting the rights of individuals who communicated in unconventional ways. But for Michael, the most important measure of success would always be personal. The moment when another family experienced the joy of discovering that their loved one had been present all along, waiting for someone to find the right key to unlock their hidden potential. I love you all, Michael said as the evening came to a close. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible, for believing in me when I seemed impossible, and for helping me become who I was always meant to be. Outside their hotel window, the city lights twinkled like stars, each one representing a life touched by the work they had accomplished together. And somewhere in those lights were individuals who had been given voices, families who had been reunited, and professionals who had learned to see human potential in forms they had never imagined. The silent genius had found his place in the world, and through his journey, he had helped countless others find theirs. The boy who had been hidden for 22 years had become a beacon of hope, proving that every human life contains possibilities as infinite as the night sky above. Michael Clayton's story was one of love conquering assumption, of faith defeating despair, and of the extraordinary potential that exists within every human heart and mind. It was in the truest sense the greatest feel-good story ever told, not because it ended with happiness, but because it continued with purpose, spreading joy and hope to every life it touched. And in the years to come, as Michael's work reached new corners of the world and touched new lives, that story would continue to grow, one hidden capability at a time, one revealed consciousness at a time, one family's joy at a time. The boy who had never moved had set the world in motion. The boy who had never spoken had given voice to thousands. The boy who had seemed to have nothing to offer had given everything. Michael Clayton had indeed become the gift he was always meant to be, not just to his family, but to the world. As the years passed, children would learn in school about the Clayton effect, the principle that human consciousness and capability exist in forms that traditional assessment might miss. Families would carry hope instead of despair when facing cognitive differences. Medical professionals would approach their patients with radical openness to unexpected forms of awareness. And somewhere in a quiet house that had once echoed with unheard genius, a new generation of children would grow up understanding that every human being contains multitudes, that love shared is love multiplied, and that the greatest gift any family can give is the faith to believe in possibilities that cannot be proven but should never be abandoned. This was Michael Clayton's legacy. The understanding that consciousness comes in infinite varieties, that intelligence deserves recognition however it manifests, and that every person no matter how different, how silent, how still, contains depths of awareness and potential that we are only beginning to understand. The boy who had been silent for 22 years had become the world's most eloquent teacher, speaking truths that could only come from lived experience of profound isolation and the transformative power of being truly seen. His story would continue to ripple outward, touching lives and changing assumptions, proving that the greatest gifts often come in the most unexpected packages. And that, perhaps, was the most beautiful truth of all. The end author's note: this novel explores the profound themes of hidden potential, unconditional love, and the transformative power of believing in possibilities that cannot be proven but should never be abandoned. Michael Clayton's story reminds us that our assumptions about human capability can be profoundly limited, and that the most extraordinary gifts sometimes come in the most unexpected forms. The story celebrates the power of family love that persists even when it seems undetermined, the importance of looking beyond our limitations to see infinite potential, and the truth that every human being contains depths of consciousness and capability that we are only beginning to understand. In a world that often measures worth by conventional standards of productivity and ability, Michael's journey offers hope that there are forms of genius, wisdom, and contribution that we have yet to recognize. It challenges us to approach every person with openness to unexpected forms of intelligence and to never underestimate the power of love, patience, and faith. This is truly a human story, not because everything turns out perfect, but because one conquers limitation, understanding triumphs over assumption, and the human spirit proves itself capable of extraordinary transformation when nurtured by those who refuse to give up hope. Michael Clayton's gift to all of us is the reminder that every person contains multitudes, that silence doesn't mean absence, and that the most profound connections often happen in ways we never see, but always matter. The end dash.